The notification sound echoed through my tiny studio apartment at 11:47 p.m. I was sprawled across my bed, surrounded by fabric swatches, mood boards, and half-eaten ramen, working on my portfolio for what felt like the 100th time that month. My phone screen lit up with a message confirmation, and my heart stopped. Message sent to Victoria Hartwell. Victoria Hartwell. The Victoria Hartwell, CEO of Vogue's digital division, the woman whose TED Talk I watched 17 times, the icon whose career trajectory I'd studied like it was required reading, and I'd just sent her. Oh no. My hands trembled as I opened my messages. There it was, in all its horrifying glory, not the professional portfolio link I'd carefully crafted for my best friend Meyer, but a photo of me in my ratty college sweatshirt, no makeup, hair in a messy bun, making an absolutely ridiculous face while holding up a hand-drawn sign that read, "When you're too broke for therapy, but too anxious for sleep, so you reorganize your closet at midnight." It was supposed to be a joke, a meme for Meyer, who would understand my spiral of anxiety about tomorrow's junior assistant interview at a small fashion blog. Instead, I'd send it to the most powerful woman in fashion media, whose email I'd been given by a former intern as a Hail Mary. Maybe she single quotes LL mentor you someday contact. I sat frozen, watching the screen. The message showed as read at 11:48 p.m. She was awake. She'd seen it. And she was probably already blocking my number. My phone buzzed again. Another message from Victoria Hartwell. Come to my office. Tomorrow, 9 a.m., One World Trade Center, 45th floor. I read it 3 times. Then 3 more. Was this real? Was she going to sue me? Have security escort me out? Lecture me about professionalism before blacklisting me from the entire industry? I didn't sleep the night. The subway ride to Lower Manhattan felt like traveling to my own execution. I changed outfits 6 times, finally settling on a black blazer over a silk cream blouse, tailored trousers, and the one pair of heels I owned that didn't have scuff marks. My portfolio bag, genuine leather. A graduation gift from my parents, felt impossibly heavy. The lobby of One World Trade Center was everything I'd imagined. Gleaming marble, impossibly high ceilings, and people who looked like they'd been born wearing designer labels. I gave my name to security, half expecting them to laugh me out of the building. Instead, the guard checked his list, nodded, and handed me a visitor badge. 45th floor. Ms. Hartwell is expecting you. The elevator ride felt like ascending to another dimension. With each floor, my anxiety multiplied. What would I even say? How do you apologize for accidentally sending a ridiculous selfie to a CEO? The doors opened to a space that took my breath away. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city, exposed brick walls covered in iconic Vogue covers, and an open floor plan where impossibly chic people glided between glass-walled offices and collaborative spaces. Everything was white, black, and chrome, with pops of color from fresh flowers and art installations. You must be Jenna Martinez. I turned to find a woman in her late 20s with a sleek bob and cat-eye glasses. Her smile was warm, which somehow made everything more terrifying. I'm Claire, Ms. Hartwell's executive assistant. Follow me. We walked through the space, and I tried not to gawk like a tourist. Claire made small talk about the weather, but I could barely process words. My mind was stuck on a loop. Why am I here? What does she want? Please don't let me throw up. Claire stopped at a corner office with glass walls that could be frosted for privacy, currently transparent, offering a view of a woman on a phone call, her back to us. Dark hair in a sleek low ponytail, navy dress, commanding presence even from behind. Victoria Hartwell. Claire knocked gently, and Victoria turned, holding up one finger. She was younger than I'd expected, early 40s, maybe with sharp features, minimal makeup, and an intensity in her eyes that could probably cut through steel. She wrapped up her call, and Claire opened the door. Ms. Hartwell, Jenna Martinez is here. Thank you, Claire. Hold my calls for the next hour. An hour? I was going to be here for an entire hour. Victoria gestured to the chair across from her minimalist desk. Sit, I said. clutching my portfolio bag like a shield. She leaned back in her chair, studying me with an expression I couldn't read. The silence stretched for what felt like an eternity, but was probably only 15 seconds. Do you know why you're here, Jenner? I swallowed hard. To apologize. I am so incredibly sorry. Ms. Hartwell, that photo was meant for my friend, and I don't know how the contacts must have I would never intentionally. She held up a hand, and I stopped mid-ramble. When I received your message last night, I was in the middle of reviewing Q for projections, exhausted, stressed, drowning in numbers that all seemed to be trending in the wrong direction. She paused. Your photo made me laugh, actually laugh out loud. For the first time in weeks, I blinked. What? The sign you were holding. Too broke for therapy, but too anxious for sleep. So you reorganize your closet at midnight. That resonated. She stood, walking to her window. Do you know what the biggest problem in fashion media is right now? I shook my head, still processing the fact that I wasn't being sued. Authenticity, or rather, the lack of it. Everything is curated, filtered, polished to perfection. We've lost the human element, the messiness, the real moments that actually connect with people. She turned back to me. I looked you up after I got your photo. Jenner Martinez, 24, NYU fashion journalism graduate, currently working retail at Zara while applying to junior positions. Your Instagram has 847 followers. Your blog about sustainable fashion has a modest but engaged readership. And according to your LinkedIn, you were editor-in-chief of your college fashion magazine. You looked me up. I did. Then I looked at what you sent your friend earlier, or what you meant to send your friend. The portfolio link that came through about 5 minutes after the photo, with a very panicked apology. Oh God, I'd forgotten about that. Your portfolio showed talent, Jenna, good writing, fresh perspective, an eye for emerging trends. But do you know what that photo showed me? I shook my head again. Vulnerability, humor, the kind of authentic voice that could actually cut through the noise. She sat back down, her gaze intense. I'm going to make you an offer, and you're going to think I'm insane. I want to hire you, Victoria said simply. The room seemed to tilt. I'm sorry, what? Not for a junior assistant position, not to fetch coffee or organize sample closets. She pulled up something on her computer, then turned the monitor toward me. I want to hire you to create a new content vertical for Vogue Digital, tentatively titled Unfiltered. On the screen was a mock-up of a webpage. The header image was striking a split screen showing the polished, Instagram perfect version of fashion industry life on one side, and the messy, real, behind-the-scenes truth on the other. The concept, Victoria continued, is radical honesty about the fashion industry, the anxiety, the financial struggles of trying to break in, the environmental cost of trends, the pressure to maintain appearances, the mental health challenges, all of it written by someone who's actually living it, not someone 10 years removed reminiscing about their struggle. You want me to write about my life. I want you to write about the truth. Your truth, yes, but also the truths we've been glossing over. Interview young designers who are drowning in student debt. Talk to models about the pressure to maintain unrealistic standards. Investigate the real cost of fast fashion. Give a voice to the assistants, the interns, the people trying to break into an industry that often feels impenetrable. She leaned forward. Make it funny when appropriate. Make it raw when necessary. But always make it real. My mind was racing. Ms. Hartwell, I appreciate this, but I'm not sure I'm qualified. You're exactly qualified. You're living it right now. You're working retail to pay rent while trying to break into an industry that undervalues young talent. You're reorganizing your closet at midnight because you can't afford therapy. You're anxious about interviews for positions that should be excited to have you. She paused. The question is, are you brave enough to write about it? I need to think about. The position starts Monday. Salary of $75,000. Benefits, your own office, well, shared with one other person initially, but your own space. You'll report directly to me, publish weekly, and have complete editorial freedom within reason. You can keep it anonymous if you want, Use a pseudonym. Whatever makes you comfortable. $75,000. I was currently making $32,000 at Zara. This doesn't make sense, I said slowly. You don't even know if I can deliver. What if I'm terrible? What if nobody reads it? What if it works? Victoria interrupted. What if it's exactly what we need? What if your accidental photo was the universe telling both of us something? She smiled slightly. I've been in this industry for 22 years. Jenna, I started as an intern, worked my way up, made every mistake in the book, and somewhere along the way, I forgot what it felt like to be the person scrambling to break in. Your photo reminded me. Why are you really doing this? I asked quietly. Victoria was silent for a moment, and something shifted in her expression, her vulnerability I hadn't expected to see, because last month, we lost one of our junior editors to burnout. She was 26, talented, and the pressure broke her. She sent an email to the entire staff about how the industry's toxic positivity and impossible standards had destroyed her mental health. Then she quit and moved back to Ohio. Victoria's voice was steady but sad. I realized that we've created an environment where people feel they can't be honest about struggling until they're already broken. I don't want to run that kind of company. I want to change it. The weight of her words settled over me. So, Victoria asked, are you in? I thought about my tiny apartment, my student loans, my parents who'd supported my impractical degree choice, my best friend Meyer who'd listened to countless anxiety spirals. I thought about all the times I'd felt like I wasn't good enough, polished enough, connected enough to make it in this world. And then I thought about what Victoria was offering, a chance to tell the truth, to maybe help someone else feel less alone in their struggle. I'm in, I heard myself say. Victoria smiled, a real, warm smile that transformed her face. Good, Claire will send you the paperwork. Welcome to Vogue. Jenna, try not to send me any more accidental selfies. I laughed, surprising myself. I'll do my best, Miss Hartwell. Call me Victoria. And Jenna, she stood, extending her hand. That photo you sent? Keep that energy. That's exactly what we need. Monday morning arrived with the force of a hurricane. I'd spent the entire weekend oscillating between euphoria and terror, questioning whether the whole thing had been a bizarre dream. But the employment contract in my email was very real, as was the badge pickup confirmation from building security. I arrived 45 minutes early, partly from nerves and partly because I still couldn't quite believe this was happening. The lobby was quieter at 8:15 a.m., with only a few determined early birds making their way through security. I collected my permanent badge, my photo, looking only slightly terrified, and took the elevator up to the 45th floor. The office was already humming with activity. People moved purposefully between desks, coffee in hand, conversations flowing in that peculiar rhythm of a workplace coming alive. I stood near the elevator, suddenly unsure where to go. You must be Jenner. A woman about my age bounded over, all energy and enthusiasm. She had box braids pulled into a high ponytail, wore a vintage banty with leather pants, and had the kind of effortless style I'd always envied. I'm Simone, your office mate. Well, technically I'm a senior digital editor, but Victoria said we'd be sharing space. Come on, I'll show you to our corner of paradise. She linked her arm through mine like we'd been friends for years and guided me through the maze of the office. People looked up as we passed, curiosity evident in their glances. Word had clearly spread about the new hire who'd gotten her job through an accidental text. Ignore the stares, Simone said cheerfully. Your office gossip gold right now. The girl who texted Victoria a meme and got hired. Some people think it's brilliant. Others think it's nepotism, which is hilarious considering none of us have ever heard of you before last week. No offense, none taken. I'm still not entirely sure this is real. Oh, it's real. And between you and me, she lowered her voice conspiratorially. Victoria needed this. She's been drowning in corporate meetings and board pressures. The last time I saw her genuinely excited about a project was probably 2 years ago. Your unfiltered vertical has her more energized than I've seen in months. We arrived at a glass-walled office smaller than Victoria's, but with the same stunning views. Two desks faced each other, one already covered with monitors, notebooks, and what appeared to be a miniature succulent garden. The other desk was empty, waiting. "That's your territory," Simone said, gesturing to the clean desk. "IT will set up your computer this morning. I've got calls until 11. But then we can grab lunch, and I'll give you the realtor, which includes where the best coffee is hidden, which bathroom has the good hand soap, and which editors to avoid when they're on deadline." "Thank you," I said, genuinely grateful. I was terrified I'd be walking into hostile territory, please. Half the office is jealous. The other half is intrigued. "Everyone's curious about what you're going to write." She grinned. No pressure or anything. The morning passed in a blur of HR paperwork, IT setup, and introductions to what felt like 60 different people whose names I'd never remember. Claire, Victoria's assistant, checked in twice to make sure I had everything I needed. Round 10:30, Victoria herself stopped by, settling in. "Yes, thank you. Everyone's been really welcoming." "Good." She glanced at Simone, who was on a video call with her headphones in. "Simone's one of our best. She'll help you navigate the politics and unwritten rules. Listen to her." She paused. "I've scheduled a meeting for 2 p.m., you, me, and our digital director, Marcus. We need to nail down the specifics of your vertical tone, scope, boundaries. Come prepared with ideas." She left before I could respond, and I stared at my blank notebook. Ideas. I needed ideas. I spent the next 3 hours brainstorming, researching, and second-guessing everything. By the time 2 p.m. arrived, I had a document filled with potential topics, a mission statement I'd rewritten 7 times, and a stress headache forming behind my eyes. The conference room was sleek and minimalist: white table, black chairs, a screen taking up most of one wall. Victoria was already there, along with a man I assumed was Marcus. He was probably in his late 30s, impeccably dressed in what I suspected was a Tom Ford suit, with salt and pepper hair, and the kind of confident posture that came from knowing exactly who he was. "Jenna, this is Marcus Chen, our digital director." "Marcus, Jenna Martinez." We shook hands, and his grip was firm. "I've heard quite a bit about you. Excited to see what you bring to the table." There was something in his tone, not quite skepticism, but close. A sense of prove yourself that made my spine straighten. We sat, and Victoria pulled up a presentation on the screen. "Let's start with the framework. Unfiltered will publish every Tuesday. Long-form pieces, 2,000 to 3,000 words. We'll promote heavily across our social channels and newsletter. The goal is to create water cooler conversation pieces people debate, share, quote." Marcus leaned forward. "My main concern is brand alignment. Vogue has a specific image, a level of aspiration and polish. How do we balance that with radical honesty without veering into complaining or, frankly, being a downer?" It was a fair question, and I'd anticipated it. I opened my laptop. "I've put together some sample topics that I think illustrate the balance." I shared my screen, showing the list I'd refined: the real cost of affordable luxury, how I spent my entire paycheck at the Row, and why it was worth it, and why it wasn't interviews with the invisible, the sample coordinators, showroom assistants, and interns who make fashion week happen. My therapist would have a field day, and packing fashion's impact on mental health. Sustainable fashion when you're barely sustaining yourself. A reality check: the networking trap. Why coffee chats feel like job interviews with extra anxiety. Each piece would blend personal narrative with broader industry analysis. I explained, finding my voice. It's not about complaining, it's about honest examination. Fashion is aspirational, but it's also an industry that real people work in, with real challenges. We can acknowledge both. Victoria nodded approvingly, but Marcus looked thoughtful. "Give me an example," he said. "Take topic 3, mental health. How do you write that without it being depressing or feeling like a therapy session?" I took a breath. This was my moment to prove I understood what they needed. I open with a scene. Me, sitting in a consultation room at an upscale mental health clinic in Tribeca, discussing my anxiety with a therapist who's wearing Prada shoes I recognized from last season. The irony of seeking help for stress partially caused by an industry built on image, in a place where even the therapist is dressed impeccably. That's the creditable, slightly humorous, immediately visual. I could see I had their attention. Then I'd expand, interview a fashion psychologist about the specific pressures, the constant comparison, the financial stress, the imposter syndrome that's rampant in creative industries. Talk to young designers and editors about their coping mechanisms, include statistics about mental health in creative fields, but weave it all through a personal narrative that keeps it engaging rather than academic. And the takeaway, Marcus pressed, that struggling doesn't mean you're weak or wrong for this industry, that the pressure is real and systemic, not just in your head, but also, and this is important, practical strategies that actually help. Apps, resources, community groups, ways to set boundaries, make it useful, not just cathartic. Marcus sat back, and I couldn't read his expression. The silence stretched. I like it, he finally said. It's honest without being nihilistic, personal without being navel-gazing, and the practical element gives it value beyond emotional resonance. He looked at Victoria. I'm on board. Let's run a pilot, 6 weeks, 6 articles. We measure engagement, reader response, social metrics. If it works, we expand. If it doesn't, we reassess. Victoria's expression was difficult to read, and for a moment, I worried I'd blown it. Then she smiled. We're not doing a pilot. We're committing 26 weeks, 1 piece per week. Jenner gets a full season to build her audience and find her voice. Victoria, Marcus started. I'm not interested in safe bets. Marcus, if we pilot this and it doesn't immediately blow up, we'll kill it before it has a chance to find its footing. That's how we've lost good ideas before. She looked at me. 26 weeks. That's my offer. At the end, we evaluate. Deal? My heart was pounding. Deal? Then let's talk specifics. I want your first piece published next Tuesday. That gives you 8 days. What's your topic? I'd already decided, actually. The topic had crystallized in my mind while I was explaining my approach to Marcus. The accidental text that changed my life. What happens when authenticity accidentally breaks through in an industry built on curation? Victoria laughed, that same genuine laugh from our first meeting. You're going to write about how you got this job, about the accident, yes, but more about what it represents, how we cure ourselves constantly, especially in fashion and media, how exhausting that is, how one unfiltered moment, a silly photo, an honest admission of struggle can resonate more than a perfectly crafted portfolio, and how maybe there's room for both the aspiration and the authenticity. Marcus was nodding slowly. It's meter, but it works. It explains your presence here without feeling defensive, and it sets up the entire premise of the vertical. Smart. Victoria stood, signaling the meeting's end. I want a draft by Friday morning. I'll give you feedback by end of day, and we'll polish over the weekend. This first piece needs to be perfected, setting the tone for everything that follows. As I left the conference room, my head was spinning. 8 days to write the piece that would launch my career. No pressure at all. The blank page mocked me for 3 solid days. I'd start writing, hate it, delete it all. Too casual, too formal, too self-indulgent, not personal enough. I went through 17 different openings before finally, at 2 a.m. on Thursday morning, something clicked. I was back in my apartment, surrounded by the same mess as the night I'd sent the accidental photo. Instead of fighting the chaos, I leaned into it. I took a photo of my desk, coffee cups, scattered notes. Mike kept photobombing in the corner and posted it to my personal Instagram with the caption, "This is what creative process actually looks like." Something about that small act of honesty broke through my writer's block. I opened my laptop and started typing. Here's what nobody tells you about breaking into fashion. You'll probably get your big break in the least photogenic way possible. Mine came in a ratty college sweatshirt, with unwashed hair, and the kind of anxiety that makes you reorganize your closet at midnight instead of sleeping. The words poured out after that. I wrote about the photo, about the terror of realizing my mistake, about the surreal meeting with Victoria, but I also wrote about everything behind that moment, the months of rejection, the financial stress, the constant feeling of not being enough. The piece became a meditation on authenticity in an age of curation, using my story as the entry point. By dawn, I had 3,200 words. By Friday morning, after editing and another round of doubt, I had 2,800 words that I didn't completely hate. I emailed it to Victoria at 8:47 a.m. and immediately wanted to unsend it. Her response came at 10:15. In my office. Now, I walked to her office on shaking legs. Through the glass walls, I could see her reading something on her screen, my piece. Probably. Her expression was unreadable. Claire waved me in, and I entered to find Victoria still focused on her monitor. She said without looking up. I sat. She finished reading, then finally turned to face me. This is good, Jenna. Really good. Relief flooded through me. You think so? I do. It's honest, it's engaging, and it walks the line between personal and universal perfectly. She pulled up a document with tracked changes. That said, I have notes. We spent the next 2 hours going through the piece line by line. Victoria's editing was surgical. She'd cut ruthlessly when I was redundant, push me to go deeper when I was skating over something important, and highlight moments that really sang. It was intense, occasionally uncomfortable, but ultimately made the piece infinitely better. The ending needs work, she said, pulling up the final paragraphs. You're wrapping up too neatly, leaves some tension, some uncertainty. You don't have all the answers yet. Own that. We reworked the conclusion together, transforming it from a tidy bow into something more honest. An acknowledgement that I was at the beginning of this journey, still figuring it out, but committed to documenting the truth of it. By noon, we had a piece we both felt good about. I'm sending this to Marcus and our copy editors, Victoria said. We'll have final edits by Monday, and it goes live Tuesday morning at 6 a.m. We're featuring it on the homepage, promoting it across all social channels, and sending it to our entire newsletter list. She looked at me seriously. This is going to be seen by millions of people. Jenna, are you ready for that? Honestly, no, but I nodded anyway. I think so. Good. Because once this is out there, there's no taking it back. You'll get praised and criticized, often in the same breath. People will have opinions about you, your writing, your story. It can be a lot. How do you handle it? I asked. The criticism, the pressure, everyone watching. Victoria was quiet for a moment. I remind myself why I'm doing it. When I started in this industry, I had mentors who took chances on me, who saw potential I didn't see in myself. This job, this position, it's partly about paying that forward. Your piece, this vertical, it's bigger than just good content. It's about changing the conversation. She smiled slightly. Also, I have a very good therapist and an expensive bourbon habit. I laughed, and some of my tension eased. Go home, Victoria said. Enjoy your weekend. Tuesday, everything changes. Tuesday morning, I woke up at 4:30 a.m., unable to sleep. The piece had gone live at 6 a.m. sharp, and I refreshed my email obsessively, watching the metrics Victoria had granted me access to. 6:15 a.m., 5,230 for views. 6:30 a.m., 12,847 views. 7 o'clock a.m., 31,293 views. My phone started buzzing with notifications. Instagram, Twitter, LinkedIn, people were sharing the piece, tagging me, commenting. Most of it was positive, thankfully. But there was criticism too. This is what passes for fashion journalism now. A diary entry. She got a job because of a meme. What about the rest of us who actually worked for it? Finally, someone being real about this industry. This is exactly what Vogue needed. Fresh voice, honest perspective. I arrived at the office at 8:30 to find a small crowd around Simone's and my office. People wanted to congratulate me, tell me they'd shared the piece, or simply say they related to it. It was overwhelming and exhilarating in equal measure. Victoria found me at 10 a.m., Claire trailing behind her with a tablet. Conference room. Now, bring coffee, you're going to need it. In the conference room, I found not just Victoria and Marcus, but several other executives I recognized from my first week. The head of social media, the brand partnerships director, and someone from the analytics team. 68,000 views in 4 hours, Marcus announced, pulling up a dashboard on the main screen. 15,000 social shares. Engagement rate of 4.2 minutes. People are actually reading it, not just skimming. Comment sections are active, but largely positive. This is exceptional performance for a new vertical. The analytics person jumped in. We're seeing something interesting in the demographic breakdown. Your core Vogue reader 35 to 55, affluent, fashion engaged, they're reading and sharing. But you're also pulling in a younger demographic we've struggled to capture. 22 to 32, aspirational, but not necessarily high income yet. Digitally native, they're the future of fashion media. Victoria looked pleased. This confirms what I suspected. There is an appetite for this kind of content. Jenna, how are you feeling? Terrified? Excited? I'm not entirely sure, I admitted. The response has been overwhelming. Get used to it, the social media director said, not unkindly. You've started a conversation. Now we need to capitalize on it. I want to schedule an Instagram live with you for Thursday Q&A format. Let readers ask you anything. We'll promote it heavily. Also, the partnerships director added, I'm already getting inquiries from brands about potential collaborations. Nothing concrete yet, but there's commercial interest. We need to be strategic about how we approach that so it doesn't undermine your authenticity. The meeting continued for another hour, covering metrics, strategy, and next steps. By the time it ended, my head was spinning. Victoria pulled me aside as people filed out. You did good, Jenna, really good. But this is just the beginning. The hard part is sustaining it, keeping that voice, that honesty, while navigating the inevitable pressures that come with success. Think you can handle it? I don't know, I said honestly, but I want to try, she smiled. That's all I can ask. What's your topic for next week? I'd been thinking about this. I want to interview young designers about student debt and how it affects their creative choices. The piece would be titled, Can You Be Creative When You're Drowning in Debt? Heavy topic, important one. Everyone talks about supporting young designers, but nobody talks about the financial reality that makes it almost impossible to break in without family money or willingness to go into crushing debt. Victoria nodded slowly. You'll need to be careful with this one. Lots of potential landmines, privilege, class, opportunity. But if you can navigate it thoughtfully, I can. I will. Then get started. You've got 6 days. The weeks that follow were a blur of writing, editing, and learning to navigate my new life as a semi-public figure. Each piece I published generated thousands of comments, shares, and increasingly, media attention. Week 3. The diversity discussion we're still getting wrong pulled in 127,000 views and sparked a heated debate across the industry. Week 5. Love your job. Great. Now calculate your hourly wage became the most shared piece Vogue Digital had published in 6 months. Week 8. The environmental cost of looking good. My carbon footprint is embarrassing led to a panel discussion at a sustainability conference where I found myself somehow moderating. By week 10, I had 47,000 Instagram followers, regular requests for podcast interviews, and a mentions folder that ranged from glowing praise to vicious criticism. I also had chronic stress headaches, was averaging 5 hours of sleep a night, and had gained 10 pounds from stress eating bagels at my desk. The breaking point came on a Wednesday in November. I was working on a piece about mental health resources in the fashion industry specifically, how lacking they were. The irony wasn't lost on me that I was writing about mental health while my own was deteriorating. I'd arranged interviews with 3 industry professionals who'd experienced burnout. The second interview was scheduled for 3 p.m. with a former editor who'd very publicly quit her job at a major magazine, citing toxic work culture and impossible expectations. At 2:47 p.m., she canceled. Via text, "Can't do this, sorry," to triggering to rehash. I stared at my phone, fighting back tears. This was my third cancellation that week. People wanted to talk about industry problems in theory, but when it came to going on record, fear of blacklisting kept them silent. I was trying to write an honest piece about mental health in fashion without anyone willing to honestly discuss it. I put my head down on my desk. Just for a moment, just to breathe. "Jenna?" I looked up to find Victoria standing in my doorway. Simone was conveniently absent, probably at lunch. "Are you okay?" "I'm fine," I said automatically. Then, remembering everything I'd written about authenticity, I corrected myself. "Actually, no, I'm not fine. I'm trying to write about mental health while mine is tanking, and nobody wants to talk on record because they're scared, and I can't blame them, but it means I can't tell this story properly." And I cut myself off. "Sorry, I'm being unprofessional." Victoria came into the office and closed the door, something I'd never seen her do before. She sat in Simone's chair. "You know what's unprofessional? Pretending everything's fine when it's not. Then burning out spectacularly 6 months from now." She studied me. "How much sleep are you getting?" "Enough, Jenner, 5 hours. Maybe 4. I wake up at 3 a.m. anxious about the next piece. So I start working." "Are you seeing your therapist?" I looked away. "I haven't had time. And honestly, I feel like I can't talk to her about work stress because so much of what I'm experiencing is public. It feels weird to complain about having opportunities I fought for." "That's exactly what you should be talking to her about," Victoria said firmly. "Success doesn't mean you're not allowed to struggle with it. And Jenna, I need you to hear this. If you burn out, this vertical fails. Not because the concept was wrong, but because I pushed you too hard, too fast." "That's on me." I blinked, surprised. "You're not pushing me. I'm pushing myself, which is exactly what makes you good at this. But it's also what will destroy you if you're not careful." She leaned forward. "I told you about the junior editor we lost to burnout. Want to know something I didn't mention? I saw it happening. I saw her staying late, working weekends, taking on more and more. And I thought, she's ambitious. She's driven. This is what it takes." I didn't intervene until it was too late. "Victoria, I'm not making that mistake again. Here's what's going to happen. You're taking the rest of the week off." "Don't argue," she added when I opened my mouth. "Your piece this week was already filed and edited. It's scheduled to publish. You don't have another deadline until next Tuesday, which gives you 6 days to sleep. See your therapist. And remember why you're doing this. I can't just take off. People are expecting quality work from a writer who's not running on fumes. Take the time." She softened slightly. "And Jenna, about your mental health piece, interview me on record. I'll talk about the editor we lost, about my own struggles with imposter syndrome, about the therapy I do to handle the pressure. If you need someone willing to be honest, I'll do it." I stared at her, speechless. "Think about it while you're off," she said, standing. "Now go home." "That's not a suggestion. It's a directive from your boss." I spent that Thursday sleeping until noon, something I hadn't done in months. Friday, I had an emergency session with my therapist, Dr. Chen, who was indeed wearing very nice shoes, but thankfully didn't comment on my noting them. "You're experiencing a classic case of success anxiety," she explained. "You fought so hard to get here. And now that you're here, you're terrified of losing it. So you're overworking to prove you deserve it, which ironically makes you more likely to fail because you can't sustain this pace. So what do I do? Set boundaries. Practice saying no. Remember that your value isn't determined by your productivity." She paused. "And maybe use some of this experience in your writing. Your readers relate to you because you're honest about struggle. This is struggle." That weekend, I did something radical. I turned off my work email. I met Meyer for brunch, went to a yoga class, read a book that had nothing to do with fashion, and slowly, the fog in my brain started to clear. Monday morning, I returned to the office feeling almost human. Simone greeted me with a hug. "Thank God you're back. Victoria's been very clear that no one was to contact you, but I've been dying to tell you your Week 10 piece got nominated for a Digital Journalism Award. First time Vogue Digital has been nominated in the Emerging Voice category." "What? When?" "Announced Friday afternoon. There's a ceremony in December. You'll probably have to give a speech if you win." The old me would have immediately spiraled into anxiety about speech writing. The slightly more rested me just felt proud. I went to Victoria's office. She was on a call but waved me in, pointing to a chair. "Yes, I understand the concerns, but the numbers don't lie. Her vertical is outperforming our traditional fashion coverage in the 25 to 40 demographic. No, I'm not suggesting we eliminate other content. I'm suggesting we expand what's working." She listened for a moment, her jaw tight. "I'll have a full presentation ready for the board meeting next week." "Yes, fine. Goodbye." She hung up and rubbed her temples. "Welcome back. How are you feeling?" "Better. Thank you for forcing me to take time off." "You're welcome." "Ready to dive back in?" "I am. And I thought about your offer to interview you for the mental health piece. If you're still willing, I'd like to take you up on it." "Good. My calendar is hellish this week, but let's do it Friday afternoon. I'll block 2 hours." She pulled up something on her computer. "In the meantime, I need to brief you on something. There's been some pushback from the board about your vertical." My stomach dropped. "What kind of pushback?" "The usual concerns about brand alignment, whether and filter undermines Vogue's aspirational image, whether focusing on industry problems alienates advertisers." She looked up at me. "They want data proving it's worth continuing. I've got the engagement numbers, the demographic expansion, the social media impact. But for the board meeting next Tuesday, I need more. I need testimonials from readers whose lives you've actually affected." "Can you pull that together?" "Yes, absolutely." I spent the next 4 days combing through thousands of comments, DMs, and emails. What I found was overwhelming. A 23-year-old assistant at a PR firm who said my piece on calculating hourly wages made her realize she was being exploited and gave her courage to ask for a raise. A fashion student who'd been considering dropping out due to debt who said my interview with young designers helped her feel less alone and find resources she didn't know existed. A 40-year-old former editor who left the industry years ago due to burnout, saying my work validated her experience and made her feel like maybe it wasn't just her failure. Dozens more. Hundreds, actually. I compiled the most powerful ones into a document, organized by theme, with quotes and permission to use them. Friday afternoon, I sat down with Victoria for our interview, my recorder between us on her desk. "Let's start with the obvious question," I said. "Why are you willing to go on record about this when so many others aren't?" Victoria was quiet for a moment. "Because I'm in a position where I can't be blacklisted. I have power, which means I have a responsibility to use it. If I won't speak honestly, how can I expect anyone else to? Tell me about the editor you lost to burnout." She took a breath. Her name was Rachel. She was 26. Brilliant writer, came up through our internship program. She worked harder than anyone I'd ever seen first in, last out, weekends, holidays. I thought she was doing great. Victoria's voice caught slightly. Then one Monday, I came in to find an email she'd sent to the entire staff at 3 a.m. It detailed every way the job had broken her, the impossible deadlines, the constant criticism disguised as feedback, the culture of toxic positivity, where admitting struggle was seen as weakness. She was hospitalized for exhaustion 2 days later. She never came back. What did you do? I read the email over and over, and I realized she was right about all of it. We'd created an environment where people felt they couldn't admit they were drowning until they'd already gone under. She met my eyes. I vowed to change things. Your accidental text, your photo, it came at a moment when I was actively looking for ways to shift the culture. You gave me an opening. Do you think it's working? The cultural shift Slowly, very slowly, there's still resistance from the board, from some senior editors who came up in the suffer for your art error. But when I see younger staff members actually taking their vacation days, or asking for mental health accommodations, or setting boundaries, that's progress. We talked for 2 hours. Victoria was unflinchingly honest about her own struggles with imposter syndrome, about the therapy she'd been in for years, about the pressure of being a woman in leadership constantly having to prove herself. By the end, I had material for what I knew would be my most important piece yet. The following Tuesday, I wasn't invited to the board meeting, but Victoria had promised to text me updates. I tried to work on other projects, but mostly just refreshed my email and fought the urge to stress eat the entire box of pastries someone had left in the break room. At 2:47 p.m., my phone buzzed. Victoria, they want to meet you. Can you come to the executive boardroom? No, my heart hammered. Simone looked up from her desk. You okay? You just went pale. The board wants to meet me. Oh shit. She stood up. Okay, you've got this. Remember, you're not asking for permission. You've already proven yourself. They're the ones who need to catch up. I made my way to the executive floor 1 level above ours. Even more intimidating, the boardroom had windows overlooking the entire city, a table that could seat 20, and currently held about 12 people in very expensive suits. Victoria stood at the head of the table, a presentation on the screen behind her. She smiled when she saw me. Gentlemen, ladies, this is Jenna Martinez, the creator and sole writer of our Unfiltered Vertical. Jenna, have a seat. I sat in the empty chair beside Victoria, acutely aware of every eye on me. Double quotes. Ms. Martinez, a silver-haired man at the far end, began. I'm Robert Chen, board chair. We've been reviewing the performance of your vertical. The numbers are impressive: engagement, demographic reach, social media amplification, all good. But we have concerns about brand alignment. What concerns specifically? I kept my voice steady. A woman in a sharp blazer jumped in. Vogue has spent decades building a brand around aspiration, luxury, and a certain standard of excellence. Your content focuses heavily on struggle, on problems, on what's wrong with the industry. Some feel this is at odds with our core identity. I glanced at Victoria, who gave me an almost imperceptible nod. Go ahead, may I ask a question? I said. What's Vogue's average reader age? Robert consulted a document. Primary demographic is 35 to 55. And what happens in 10 years when that demographic is 45 to 65? And the next generation has moved on to other publications because we didn't speak to them when they were young. The room was silent. I continued, heart pounding but voice clear. With respect, I don't think Unfiltered contradicts Vogue's brand. I think it expands it. We can show aspiration, the beautiful clothes, the amazing careers, the dream life, while also acknowledging the reality of how people actually get there. The struggle doesn't diminish the achievement. It makes it more meaningful. But your pieces are often critical of the industry. Another board member said, doesn't that alienate the very brands we depend on for advertising? I've thought about this a lot, I said, and here's what I've found. The brands that are doing things right don't fear scrutiny. They welcome it. The brands that are treating workers fairly, investing in sustainability, creating inclusive environments, they want that story told. It's the brands with something to hide who don't like questions. I paused. And personally, I'd rather have fewer advertisers who align with our values than more advertisers we have to avoid criticizing. Robert leaned back, studying me. Bold position for someone who's been here 3 months. She's right, though, Victoria said. We've actually had increased interest from brands like Patagonia, Everlane, and several sustainable luxury labels specifically because of the unfiltered content. They see it as authentic and want to be associated with that authenticity. She pulled up a slide showing brand partnership inquiries, and the numbers were compelling. Additionally, Victoria continued, Jenna has compiled testimonials from readers. I'd like her to share a few. I opened my phone, pulled up my document, and read 3 of the most powerful stories. The assistant who asked for a raise, the student who stayed in school, the former editor who felt validated. When I finished, the room was quiet again, but it felt different this time. Ms. Martinez, Robert said slowly, do you believe you can sustain this level of honest content without burning out yourself? You write very personally about struggle. That's emotionally taxing work. It was a more perceptive question than I'd expected. I won't lie, it is taxing. But Victoria and I have talked about sustainability. I'm seeing a therapist. I'm learning to set boundaries. And I'm getting better at asking for help. I smiled slightly. Actually, I'm planning to write about that, about how to do confessional work without destroying yourself in the process. Because I think that's something a lot of writers and creators struggle with. Another board member, a younger woman I hadn't heard speak yet, leaned forward. I've been reading your work. My daughter is 24, trying to break into fashion. She sends me your articles every week, and we discuss them. You're giving her and me language for things we both felt but couldn't articulate. She looked at Robert. I vote we continue the vertical, not as a trial, as a permanent feature. Others murmured agreement. Robert looked around the table, then at Victoria, then at me. Ms. Martinez, thank you for your time. We'll deliberate and Victoria will inform you of our decision. I was dismissed. Back in my office, Simone was waiting. Well, I have no idea. They thanked me for my time and dismissed me. That's either very good or very bad. We didn't have to wait long. 30 minutes later, Victoria appeared at our door. Her expression neutral. Jenna, my office. I followed her, my stomach in knots. She closed the door behind us. The board voted to continue unfiltered as a permanent vertical. A smile broke across her face. They also approved budget for you to hire an assistant and increase your salary by 15%. I actually felt dizzy. Are you serious? Completely. Robert was impressed by your composure and your argument about brand expansion. Several board members specifically mentioned the reader testimonials. She sat on the edge of her desk. You did good in there, Jenna. You didn't apologize for your work or try to soften it. You defended it intelligently while also showing you understand the business concerns. That's rare. I was terrified, I know, but you didn't let it stop you. She handed me a folder. Here are the details about hiring your assistant. Post the job this week. Start interviews next week. You need support, and you've earned it. Over the next few months, things shifted in ways I couldn't have predicted. I hired an assistant, Marcus, no relation to our digital director, a recent journalism grad who was enthusiastic, detail-oriented, and had a gift for research that made my job infinitely easier. He took over scheduling interviews, fact-checking, and managing the flood of reader emails that I could no longer handle alone. My mental health piece featuring Victoria's interview became my most read article to date, sparking conversations across the industry. 3 other publications reached out to do follow-up pieces. The CEO of a major fashion house wrote an op-ed in WWD responding to it, announcing new mental health benefits for their employees. I was invited to speak on panels, to guest lecture at FIT, to participate in industry roundtables about the future of fashion media. It was exhilarating and exhausting in equal measure. But success brought complications. In February, I wrote a piece about diversity in fashion going beyond representation to actual equity, examining who has power, who makes decisions, who gets promoted. It was thoroughly researched, carefully written, and featured interviews with designers and editors of color about their experiences. The response was mixed. Hundreds of readers loved it, called it necessary, shared their own stories. But there was also backlash. I was accused of being divisive, of pushing a woke agenda, of not understanding how business works. Several prominent fashion bloggers criticized the piece, and my DM is filled with messages ranging from thoughtful disagreement to outright harassment. I made the mistake of reading all of it. By the end of that week, I was a mess. Every criticism felt personal. Every negative comment seemed to prove I was a fraud who didn't know what she was talking about. Victoria found me crying in my office at 7 p.m. on a Friday. Talk to me, she said, closing the door. Maybe they're right. I said miserably. Maybe I am out of my depth. I'm 24. I've been in this industry for 6 months, and I'm writing about systemic issues I probably don't fully understand. Who am I to? Stop. Victoria interrupted firmly. Right now, you're doing exactly what they want, doubting yourself, questioning whether you deserve to have a voice. Don't give them that power. But what if I got things wrong? What if? Did you research thoroughly? Yes. Did you quote sources accurately? Yes. Did you consider multiple perspectives? I tried to. Then you did your job. Journalism isn't about making everyone happy. It's about telling important stories, especially when they make people uncomfortable. She sat down across from me. I'm going to tell you something I wish someone had told me when I was your age. You will never be perfect. You will make mistakes. You will write things that in hindsight you'd approach differently. That's part of growth. But you cannot let fear of criticism silence you. How do you deal with it? The negative feedback. I distinguish between criticism that's useful and criticism that's just noise. Useful criticism makes me think, makes me question my assumptions, helps me grow. Noise is just people being uncomfortable with change or projecting their own issues. Learn to tell the difference. She pulled out her phone and showed me an email thread. Look, this is from a reader in Atlanta. She's a Black woman who's been trying to break into fashion editorial for 5 years. She said your diversity piece made her feel seen in a way no other mainstream publication has. Victoria scrolled. Here's another one. From a designer in LA, your piece inspired her to look at her own hiring practices and realized she's been perpetuating the same systems she claims to oppose. But the negative voices feel so much louder. They always do. That's why you have to consciously focus on the positive, not to dismiss valid criticism, but to maintain perspective. She stood. Go home, Jenna. Step away from social media this weekend. Spend time with people who remind you why you're doing this. Come back Monday ready to write your next piece. March brought an unexpected opportunity. A major fashion documentary was in production, a series for Netflix about the next generation reshaping the industry. The producers reached out. They wanted to feature me as one of the subjects. Following my work for several weeks, it's great exposure, Victoria said when I told her. But it's also invasive. Cameras following you, every moment documented. Think carefully about whether you want that. I thought about it for exactly 2 days before saying yes. The filming was surreal. A small crew followed me through interviews, documented my writing process, filmed me at industry events. They wanted real moments, which meant filming me stressed about deadlines, dealing with difficult sources, having editorial disagreements with Victoria. One particular scene captured me at 11 p.m. in the office, working on a piece about fast fashion's environmental impact. I was frustrated because the data was conflicting and I couldn't find a clear narrative. Why is this so hard? I muttered to the camera, half forgetting it was there. Every time I think I have a clear answer, I find information that complicates it. How do you write about something this complex without oversimplifying or losing readers? The producer, Maya, ironically also named Meyer, spoke from behind the camera. Do you always struggle this much with pieces? The good ones? Yes. The easy pieces are usually the shallow ones. The important stories are hard because they're complicated. I laughed tiredly. That probably makes for boring documentary footage. Actually, Maya said, it's perfect. This is what people need to see, that good journalism is hard work, not inspiration striking. The documentary wasn't scheduled to air until fall, but knowing it would eventually be out there made everything feel more permanent, more real. In April, I wrote what would become my most controversial piece, Why I'm Not Sure I Believe in Dream Jobs Anymore. It was born from a conversation with my therapist about the pressure of loving your job in an era where work has become identity. The piece examined how do what you love has been weaponized to justify low pay, long hours, and exploitation, particularly in creative industries like fashion. I was nervous publishing it. This was me questioning the very premise of my own success story. The response was immediate and polarizing. Think pieces about my piece appeared in the New York Times, The Atlantic, and Forbes. Some praised it as a necessary critique of hustle culture. Others called it privileged, ungrateful, or out of touch. A particular criticism stung. Easy for someone who got a dream job from a lucky mistake to say dream jobs don't matter. Victoria called me into her office 2 days after publication. "We need to talk." My heart sank. I crossed a line. "No. But we need to discuss how you're handling the response." She pulled up a Twitter thread where I'd been arguing with critics. This is not productive. They're misrepresenting what I wrote. They're saying I'm against people pursuing passion. Which isn't, I know, but engaging in these arguments just gives them more fuel. You're not going to convince them, and you're exhausting yourself trying. She softened. "Jenner, part of doing this kind of work is accepting that you can't control how people interpret it. You put your honest thoughts out there. Some will get it, some won't, and some will deliberately misunderstand it for clicks. That's the reality. So I should just ignore it? I'm saying choose your battles. Respond thoughtfully to genuine criticism. Ignore bad faith interpretations. And remember that the work speaks for itself." That evening, I went to dinner with my best friend Meyer, not the documentary producer. We went to our favorite hole-in-the-wall type place, and I vented for 20 minutes straight. "You know what I think," Maya said, stealing a spring roll from my plate. "I think you're mad because they're touching on something you actually worry about." "What do you mean?" The lucky mistake comment. "It bothers you because part of you still questions whether you earned this or just got lucky." I opened my mouth to argue, then stopped. She was right. I worked hard, I said quietly. Before the photo, after the photo, I work hard every single day. I know, and everyone who actually knows you knows that. But Jenna, you're never going to convince everyone. There's always going to be someone who thinks you didn't earn it, or you're too young, or to something. She reached across the table and squeezed my hand. "Stop trying to prove yourself to people who've already decided not to believe in you. Prove yourself to yourself." May marked 6 months since my first piece published. Victoria wanted to do something to commemorate it, a retrospective, maybe, or a reader event, or, she said during our weekly check-in, you could write a follow-up to your first piece. 6 months of unfiltered. What I've learned about authenticity in fashion, I liked the idea immediately. Writing that piece felt like closing a circle. I reflected on everything that had changed, the opportunities, the criticism, the growth, the challenges. I wrote about reader stories that had moved me, mistakes I'd made, things I'd do differently. But I also wrote about what hadn't changed, my commitment to honest storytelling, my belief that fashion could be both aspirational and authentic, my determination to give voice to people usually left out of the conversation. The piece was vulnerable in a different way than my early work. Less raw desperation, more earned wisdom. I published it on a Tuesday in late May, and the response felt like a homecoming. Readers who'd been with me from the beginning shared their own 6-month journeys. New readers discovered the archive and binge-read everything. The comment section became a community conversation about growth, change, and the ongoing work of staying authentic. 3 days after publication, I got an email that made me stop breathing. "Dear Ms. Martinez, I'm writing on behalf of the National Magazine Awards Committee. Your Unfiltered Vertical has been selected as a finalist in the Best New Digital Content category. The awards ceremony will be held in June in New York City. Congratulations on this achievement. We look forward to celebrating your work." I read it 3 times, certain I was misunderstanding. Then I ran to Victoria's office. She was on a call, but took one look at my face and told whoever was on the line she'd call back. What happened? I thrust my phone at her. She read, and a massive grin spread across her face. "Jenna, this is huge. We're just finalists. We might not win. Finalist for a National Magazine Award 6 months into your career? That's incredible regardless of whether you win." She came round her desk and, unexpectedly, hugged me. "I'm proud of you. You've earned this." The weeks leading up to the ceremony were a blur of preparation. Victoria insisted I needed a stylist for the event. which led to the surreal experience of being dressed by someone who'd outfitted celebrities for the Met Gala. The night of the ceremony, I stood in front of my mirror in a midnight blue dress that probably cost more than my first car. And for a moment, I thought about that night 6 months ago, sitting in my messy apartment, making a ridiculous face, accidentally sending it to Victoria Hartwell. If someone had told me then where I'd be now, I never would have believed them. The ceremony was at Cipriani in Midtown, glittering lights, elegant people, an atmosphere of refined celebration. I sat at a table with Victoria, Marcus, my digital director, Simone, and several other Vogue staffers. My parents had flown in from Texas and sat at a nearby table, looking proud and slightly overwhelmed. When they announced the finalists in my category, my hand shook so badly I had to clasp them in my lap. And the winner is Unfiltered by Jenna Martinez, Vogue Digital. The room erupted in applause. Victoria grabbed my hand and squeezed. Simone was openly crying, and I walked up to that stage feeling like I was floating. The award was heavy in my hands. I looked out at hundreds of faces, industry leaders, accomplished journalists, people I'd admired for years. 6 months ago, I began, voice shaking slightly. I accidentally sent my CEO a ridiculous selfie instead of my portfolio. It was my worst nightmare. It turned into my greatest opportunity. Laughter rippled through the crowd. But this award isn't really about me. It's about everyone who's ever felt like they didn't belong in this industry, who struggled to reconcile their love of fashion with its problematic realities, who wanted to see themselves reflected in the stories being told. I took a breath. It's about my boss, Victoria Hartwell, who took a chance on an unproven writer because she believed authentic voices matter. It's about my readers, who share their stories and trust me with their truth. It's about everyone fighting to make this industry better, more honest, more inclusive. I held up the award. This belongs to all of us. Thank you. The applause as I walked off stage felt like validation for every moment of doubt, every sleepless night, every scary decision that had led me here. 2 weeks after the awards ceremony, on a quiet Tuesday afternoon, I got a call from an unknown number. Jenna Martinez speaking. This is David Chen from HarperCollins. Do you have a moment to talk? HarperCollins, the publisher. My heart started racing. Of course, we've been following your work at Vogue with great interest. Your Unfiltered pieces have sparked important conversations, and frankly, we think there's a book there. Would you be interested in discussing a book deal? I nearly dropped my phone. They wanted me to expand on the themes from my column, the honest reality of breaking into fashion, the mental health struggles, the financial pressures, the environmental concerns, into a full-length book, part memoir, part industry analysis, part manifesto for change. I need to think about it, I managed to say, and discuss with my employer. Of course, we'll send over a formal proposal. Take your time. I hung up and immediately went to Victoria's office. She was reviewing layouts, but looked up when I appeared in her doorway. HarperCollins wants me to write a book. Victoria's eyebrows shot up. That was fast. Is that okay? I mean, would Vogue sit down? Jenner. She closed her laptop. This is a good thing. Amazing, actually. But we need to talk about what it means. We spent the next hour discussing logistics. The book wouldn't conflict with my column, in fact. Victoria thought it could help promote both. But writing a book while maintaining a weekly column would be intense. You need to scale back slightly, Victoria said. Maybe every other week instead of every week while you're working on the book. We can fill the off weeks with guest contributors to the vertical, other writers exploring similar themes. You'd be okay with that? Jenna, you've built something bigger than just your own voice. Unfiltered is now a brand, a space for honest industry dialogue. Bringing in other voices actually strengthens that. She smiled. Plus, I'm not going to be the person who holds you back from writing a book. Take the deal. We'll figure out the balance. I met with the HarperCollins team the following week. The advance they offered was more money than I'd made in my entire life before Vogue. The deadline was aggressive, manuscript due in 8 months but doable. I signed the contract in July, a year and a month after the accidental text message changed everything. Writing the book was brutal. I worked early mornings and late nights, trying to balance it with my column, public appearances, and maintaining some semblance of a personal life. My assistant Marcus became invaluable, as did therapy sessions where Dr. Chen helped me process the pressure. But there was something deeply satisfying about the work. Unlike the column, which was reactive and immediate, the book allowed me to step back and see the bigger picture, to trace threads across all my pieces, to go deeper than 3,000 words aloud, to really examine what I'd learned. In September, the documentary aired on Netflix. The New Guard, Voices Reshaping Fashion, became a surprise hit, and I was suddenly recognizable in ways I'd never experienced. People stopped me on the subway, in coffee shops, at the grocery store. Are you the girl from that documentary? I love your column. It was flattering and deeply weird in equal measure. The documentary also brought renewed attention to that first piece, the accidental text story. It became a meme, a motivational tale, an example cited in articles about taking risks and embracing authenticity. Victoria and I were interviewed together for several press pieces about mentorship and the changing media landscape. In one interview, a journalist asked her if she'd known how big Unfiltered would become. Honestly, Victoria said, "No, I knew Jenna had talent. I knew there was appetite for honest content. But this exceeded my expectations." She glanced at me. "The best part is watching her grow into her voice. She's not the anxious 24-year-old who walked into my office anymore. She's found her confidence while maintaining her authenticity." That's rare. Later, in private, I asked her, "Do you ever regret it? Taking such a big chance on me?" "Never, not even once." She was quiet for a moment. "Do you want to know something? That night I got your accidental photo, I was seriously considering leaving. The stress was becoming unbearable. The work felt increasingly meaningless, and I couldn't remember why I loved this industry anymore." She smiled. "Your ridiculous selfie reminded me, and creating Unfiltered, working with you, watching it succeed, it gave me renewed purpose. So really, we saved each other." In November, I turned in my book manuscript. It was titled Unfiltered, The Real Story of Breaking into Fashion and What It Takes to Stay There. My editor loved it. The publication date was set for the following spring. By December, I'd been at Vogue for a full year. The anniversary felt momentous. I decided my column that week would be a letter to my past self, the girl in the ratty sweatshirt. Awake at midnight, too anxious to sleep, reorganizing her closet and accidentally sending a photo to a CEO. I wrote, "Dear past me, right now, you're terrified. You just made what feels like the worst mistake of your life, and you're convinced your career in fashion is over before it even began. I wish I could tell you not to worry. But honestly, the worry is part of what drives you. The anxiety that makes you reorganize your closet at midnight is the same energy that will fuel your writing, your work ethic, your determination to tell stories that matter. Here's what I can tell you. That mistake wasn't a mistake at all. It was the universe, or fate, or dumb luck, whatever you want to call it, giving you exactly what you needed. A chance to be seen not for a polished portfolio, but for your authentic self. The year ahead will be harder than anything you've experienced. You'll doubt yourself constantly. You'll face criticism that cuts deep. You'll work longer hours than you thought possible. You'll make mistakes, big and small. But you'll also write stories that change people's lives. You'll build a community of readers who feel less alone because of your honesty. You'll win awards you never dreamed of. You'll write a book. You'll find your voice. Most importantly, you'll learn that authenticity and a weakness